Started out mostly, I was like kind of a junior agent to someone. They wanted me to find my niche after that. I wanted to do senior living, but they didn't really find that too interesting. They were more of a multi-retail type group. Started getting some traction, but felt I could probably do it on my own. If I was building out a team there for senior living, might as well do it on my own. So moved back to St. Louis to get that started up, and yeah, here we are. As I said, 4.5 years later, just in the office, doing the research, figuring out who owns a property, and then trying to find their contact information, reaching out, putting them in a system. It's a lot of boring research, but I just started researching them one by one. I think I started with Missouri, and then maybe went Illinois next, and then Kansas, Tennessee, Mississippi, and it's probably like 6,000 or 7,000, 8,000 properties across those 5 states. Probably took like 2 years of just always researching each property, figuring out who owned it, calling them. You're just a young guy out there calling, and it's tough to kind of got to see a long-term goal and stay motivated, because yeah, you know you're not getting paid for if you have nothing. It's 6, like these deals take a while. It took like 18 months from start to finish to get the first one done, and then next year probably 30 or so million. I had a lot that was looking good, so that was going in at 2023, but then interest rates start going up. Just going 8 to 12 months without a deal closing can get tough too. In 2024 probably did like, I think I did 10 deals, 60 or 70 million. This year I've already done 6 deals. I have about, I think 12 or 1,300 clients. I take a lot of time to get to know what my clients are looking for, kind of a filter system in our database. People ask me too, like, hey, is it the market or is it just being in the business longer, why it's so active? I think it's a mix of both. Just kind of got to figure it out as you go. Just consistency and just doing it. I don't know.
All right, Andrew Montgomery, founder, CEO of Montgomery Intermediary Group. Can you tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing at MIG? I know you're working heavily in that senior living space, which is, an asset class that's kind of foreign to me. So,
yep.
But yeah, kind of walk us through what you got going on over there.
Yeah, so I feel like whenever I tell people what I do, a lot of them kind of make a joke after, like, oh, if I need to move my, grandma or grandpa into a home, I'll give you a call. I think they think I move people into like nursing homes, assisted living, and so on. Some people get it, but yeah, it's like similar to you. If you're selling houses, some people sell multifamily, etc. We're selling nursing homes, assisted living, memory care, independent living, and kind of similar asset types. Sometimes you get into the behavioral health space. There's some overlap in that a bit. But yeah, that's really it. Just selling these deals. Got a guy, like I said earlier, who's getting debt for them, and so every time you do a deal, you get a fee. And
yeah, had you been working in any other vertical as an agent or broker before you kind of moved into this space and branched out on your own?
Yeah, I was working. So like going into my senior year at college, I interned at a brokerage down there.
Okay.
So it was like summer going into my senior year. Worked under some people there. You're kind of doing work for them, trying to dig up new business. That was started out mostly, whatever I was like kind of a junior agent to someone. So they were, I think, doing retail. That kind of they wanted me to find my niche after that and move teams. I wanted to do senior living, but they didn't really find that too interesting. They were more of a multi-retail type group. But at a certain point, I just kind of started doing it, and then got a team to work on that. But the team didn't really know the senior space too well, and so started getting some traction. But felt I could probably do it on my own. If I was building out a team there for senior living, might as well do it on my own. So moved back to St. Louis to get that started up, and yeah, here we are. What was that? I said 4.5 years later.
Yeah. So what market were you in when you were building out when you were at that firm?
So it started out, I think it was big box retail, and then they wanted me to move over to banks for a bit, just kind of more retail. But then eventually I got them to kind of let me take a swing at senior living.
Yeah.
But that was down in Dallas, and there was no. When I started out, even there, kind of they're always about finding a niche. So don't just go, hey, I'm gonna do senior living across the entire country. Kind of maybe get focus on a certain acuity type or a certain state. So my family, my uncle owns a company that owns and operates in Missouri, Illinois, Kansas, Tennessee, and Mississippi. So when I started out, I just started researching. This kind of public record information with there's licensed beds, they call them, in the space. So you can kind of pull. I think I pulled off like the HUD website, every single senior living community in those states. it's a lot of boring research, but just started researching them one by one. I think I started with Missouri, and then maybe went Illinois next, and then Kansas, Tennessee, Mississippi, and probably took like 2 years of just always researching each property, figuring out who owned it, calling them. Yeah, and that's kind of how I got the start, and just making introductions, telling them who I am, what I do, and eventually get some deals.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So when you were doing this research, were you were calling on all these senior living facilities and just kind of establishing that relationship?
Yeah, so there's conferences too, but yeah, I started with one property and called them like, hey, my name's Andrew. My family's in the space. And I focus in those states trying to have, especially when out on my own, trying to have some sort of track record background. Yeah. So I kind of use that family background as my credibility. Like, hey, our family's been in the space, own and operate X amount in these markets, and now building out this building out the brokerage. So if you're looking for any deals, let me know. I just try to take notes on what they're looking for, so I can kind of keep in touch accordingly. It was never really pushy. Deals kind of came with time. People are like, oh, I don't want to buy, but I like to sell.
Yeah.
So I started calling, and then there's a few bigger conferences, too. So it's been a busy start to the year. I had one conference in January, another one in February, and then just had another one I got back from. It was last week. So I've had 3 to start. There's like one called Nick I go to twice a year. There's one called Asha I go to once or twice a year. Another one called ECAP I go to once or twice a year. And those are kind of the big 3.
Are those in like Midwestern states that you're heading to, or are those all?
Those are national. So I feel like in the winter they try to go to warm spots. So
yeah.
Asha was in Scottsdale, Phoenix area. ECAP was in Miami, and then Nick that I was just at was in San Diego.
Oh wow, those are great stops.
There are more local ones too. Like each state has their own kind of conferences, and there's other smaller ones. But a lot of those ones are more operator kind of intensive, just not so much deals. Whereas these ones are pretty big. There's like thousands of people there, and it's like the last one I'm at is like speed dating. I think in 2 days we had 30, 35 meetings. It's just like back to back from 9 to 5, and then 5:30 meet up with someone at happy hour. 7 you have dinner, and you're just going for 2.5 days. It's exhausting. But it's really good. Everyone's there, so you get to meet in person and so on.
Yeah, that's great. So when you're at these conferences, is your primary goal just establishing relationships with sellers and owner operators? Or are there a lot of like new buyers that would even show up to this thing?
Yeah, there's, I'm there trying to put a face to the name with clients I've been in touch with. So usually, people I've done, talked about deals, just gotten to know over the phone and email, hey, meet in person, get them to like you.
Yeah.
See what your chemistry is kind of like. But also, some of the bigger groups, it's easier to, they have people reaching out to them, a lot. So it's, once you meet them, hey, they know who you are, probably going to be more responsive after that. But yeah, also meeting with new groups that, haven't connected with before. Always looking for new buyers, have a lot of them, but more interested in sellers always. But yeah, you can't have enough buyers either, but you kind of got to figure out who's a good buyer. Some people are, they'll say, hey, I want to buy anything and everything, and they're just trying to look at stuff, aren't getting them done. So kind of you learn through experience who can get it done and who's easy to work with, who's a pain, and it's been fun. I got a lot of clients, and each of them are different, and so
yeah.
But right, at the stage where you just got to get the deals done, you got to kind of put up with some clients who might be a headache, just if they're getting them done still, but everyone's a character at times.
Yeah, that's funny. It is because so you're 4.5 years in since launching MIG.
Yep.
What was it like making that transition from, working at the original brokerage you were at? Like, what were the steps like to move back to St. Louis and kind of launch that on your own? It's pretty cool taking that step relatively early in your career.
I mean, yeah, it's nice doing it then because I could live at home with the parents.
Yeah.
Eat their food, not pay rent.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I was pretty similar to what I was doing at the last brokerage. I really didn't have a team there that was, big in the senior living space, like feeding me any deals. I didn't have a team at all. So I was really starting that over there. But moved back, just kind of kept doing research. I'm just in the office, literally, like, I would use these subscriptions, each property, like I said, and really boring. But I don't have to do too much of that now. And the plan is to kind of hire people to do that. Same thing. I made it work, and so other people can make it work too. But just in the office, doing the research, figuring out who owns the property, and then trying to find their contact information, reaching out, putting them in a system. It's probably like 6 or 7, 8,000 properties across those 5 states. I have about, I think, 12 or 1,300 clients. And each those clients are kind of companies. There's multiple people at each company and so on. But yeah, I was just doing that research. The first deal, I had a lot, I'd hoped to work out, but I think the first deal closed in December of 21. So it took like 18 months from start to finish to get the first one done. And then next year, I think I did like, I don't know, probably 30 or so million. And the next year I was, had a lot that was looking good. So that was going into 2023, but then interest rates started going up.
Yeah.
So it kind of took a pause from, probably late 2022 to late 2023. It slowed down a bunch. It was harder to get deals done. Deals that we had under LOI or contract kind of changed up because, debt got more expensive. It kind of changed up the deals and so on. And still got 4 or 5 done that year. And then, things started settling down. Debt started, was the same and or going down. So 2024 probably did like, I think I did 10 deals, 60 or 70 million. This year I've already done 6 deals. Trying to get like 20 or so done. Trying to get to 100 million this year. And then I got the guy too, like I said, joined up over the summer doing the debt. He closed a loan on, he refied, 6 homes last year and should, knock on wood, be closed on one, I think, at the end of this month, and it's got others lined up and so on. So it's getting more active, but yeah, just started out, and doing the research and every day just calling people, go to these conferences. I was borrowing money for all these subscriptions from my dad.
Yeah.
So with time, was able to pay him back, but yeah, it was, it's stressful when you're not making any money and just, but luckily again, like I could live at home and it was cheaper. I had to move from Dallas. So I really liked Dallas, but didn't have the money to pay rent or anything. And then, again, in 2023, it got stressful again. Like I did well the year before, ended up all right that year, but, this, going, 8 to 12 months without a deal closing can get tough too. And so I had a lot that, was, hey, this is supposed to close, it got pushed back or just didn't work out. So that was stressful too, just trying to make things work. But I think we're past that and the industry is getting better for senior living. People ask me too, like, hey, is it the market or is it just being in the business longer, why it's so active? I think it's a mix of both. Like I said, interest rates not going up, not being in the heart of COVID when, it's just so hard in the senior living space. You couldn't move people into homes because all the rules and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great. Happy I went through it. There are times when it's just really tough. I had, I could have probably, I've had potential to move elsewhere to other companies in the space and, probably get deals from them and, work with them. But glad I, took the time to do it on my own. It's paying off. And, it's still stressful at times, but, I like being busy and, plan to kind of keep building out the team slowly but surely. Probably, I could hire someone today, but it's just, I'm traveling a lot. The guy I hired who joined up, he's remote too, so, he knows the space well. Don't have to be too hands-on.
Yeah.
Just trying to figure that next step out. We're working on some things, and next year we might hire 1 or 2 more people, but it's, if you're hiring someone younger, newer, I want to be with them in the office too, and I'm not in the office much, so it's kind of balancing my life and work.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I think it's really cool thinking about, like, especially year one, you're kind of expecting stuff to take time.
Yeah.
But still, it's like every day you're going in, you're doing that boring, tedious work, and you're like, it's going to pay off, but on some days you don't know if it's going to pay off.
Some days you're like, and then I feel like early on too, you get excited about like these deals, like, oh, it's going to work out. And then you got to learn, like, you got to have enough cooking. I used to like always have like, if I have one under contract or under LOI, I'm pumped.
Yeah.
At least I'm always kind of working my way towards something, but like I usually didn't have anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, and some days, people aren't asked on the phone or something, and you're just a young guy out there calling, and it's tough to kind of got to see a long-term goal and stay motivated because you're not getting paid for it. If you have nothing, it's 6. Like these deals take a while. It's you say you get an offer.
Yeah.
From there it's usually like 30 to 60 days sometimes to get contracts together, because it gets really like there's APAs and OTAs. There's 2 different contracts that come with each deal, because it's real estate and a business. You kind of value it off the business usually.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of complicated there. And then from there, 30 to 60 day due diligence, 30 to 60 day closing. So it's just a really long process. And so, it's really nice having more of a, what do they always say? Like, just have enough cooking.
Yeah.
So now if one deal gets delayed or, doesn't work out, usually they work out, but sometimes, they just take longer than expected. Not that big of a deal anymore. We have about, probably 15 or 20 under LOI and contract, and just trying to get more. And yeah, it's, you got to really kind of see the long-term, rewards of sticking with it, and it's consistency and, so on.
Yeah. Yeah. What was it like? 'Cause this is something that I think a lot of guys, like our age getting into this space definitely will join a company, or like in that third year, especially when you were anticipating all this income coming in, and then all of a sudden it's not, or these deals get delayed, and you start looking at like, hey, I've built actually a pretty good track record. I could go somewhere, get a salary, at least have some guarantee, so I'm not sitting on $0 months over and over again. What kind of, just daily kind of processes, practices, what helped you and continues to help you stay motivated and driven, or just optimistic when times are, tough?
I mean, I'm a busybody.
Yeah.
And I've always had a good work ethic. But yeah, it's like, it was really stressful at times. But I just get in there, try to, 8, 9 to 5 at least, stay busy. And like, saying it's really boring doing that research. But I was probably, at first it was like 8 to 7, just because I knew like you kind of got to get a head start. Like I'm not, when you're early on and don't have the deals, you got to get the deals to start making money sooner. But just being in the office, making sure I'm working, normal hours, still doing work at night that I feel is like busy work, early on. At times I still need to do that, if I got to get some deal stuff done. But I don't know, I was always pretty good just, doing what I need to do, and, finding time to relax too. But I think it's just kind of built in me.
Yeah.
I'm not the person to, I'm really just got to stay busy, whether it's work or, exercise or hanging out. I'm kind of always on the go, and same with like moving. Like I'm always bouncing around. This kind of people used to call me, I think in like grade school, I was like the Energizer Bunny in soccer, just always running around and stuff like that. So I'm just good at staying consistent, and that's about it. I don't know if there's like a secret sauce to that, but just kind of seeing the end goal and knowing it's just you don't have to work. I've had brokers like, oh, you got to work 100-hour weeks, which is good. You're going to get there, but you might burn out. I think it's more so consistency, just, being in the office, or, even working from home. I like working from home. I can just roll out of bed and do that and work at night easier because I have my computers, but just consistency and, just doing it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Got to kind of get it done.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. It reminds me, what you were talking about reminds me a lot of my first year in the business too, of doing that work that, like, I remember I would get in the office like maybe 7:38 after working out, and then I would stay there sometimes till like 9:30 at night.
Yeah.
Because kind of like you living at home, during COVID, I was kind of living at home and kind of living at my fiance Courtney's parents' house.
Yep.
And so, like, and honestly, Courtney always gets laughs because I say that was the favorite time of my life. Like, I could move back. Yeah, I could move back there in a heartbeat. Yep. But obviously, time comes and you gotta move out. But there was so much work that I was doing that, in hindsight, like some of it was just going down rabbit holes of just figuring out what you don't need to do.
Yeah.
And I do think that's something to be said about like those 100-hour weeks to where you're at now, is like part of it is just figuring out what's the best way to spend your time.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially when you're not given the blueprint. I was kind of in the same way. So I work with my mom and our team, but they're agents who have been in just kind of over time. Like my mom's been doing it 40 years. Never necessarily had like the business plan. Has just always been a very good, reputable agent that kind of.
Yep.
But so there wasn't like a system that they were like, here, follow the system. This is how you get clients. So you kind of got to figure it out on your own.
Yep.
And it like for me, that was like what kept me going. It was like, maybe I'm going to discover something here. I might call 300 people and get one call back.
Yep.
But, you know, it might be worth
That's how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you call people, it's the wrong number. You know, it's hard to, you got to figure out what the right information is and keep following up with them. And
Yeah.
but yeah, I know. Early on, it was kind of similar. I got in a system of I got to wake up probably like 5 or 6 to try to get to the gym at the Mac over West County. And
Yeah.
did that, get to the office by 7:30, work till 6 or 7. My little brother called me a grandma at that time because I was going to bed at like 9.
Yeah.
And then at a certain point, I was like, okay, well, I'm not really doing anything after work, so I kind of changed that up and try to get to the gym after work now.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you got to figure it out. Like people would ask me questions. I'm like, let me get back to you on that. And I have to go call like my family or, friends in the industry or kind of mentors and, figure out, I was fortunate to have, other people had started similar companies that they could help when I needed it. I had family that knew stuff that they could help when I needed it. Same with friends. And so, hey, I'll get back to you on that question because I didn't know the answer and, just kind of got to figure it out as you go.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really beneficial approach too. Like just thinking from the eyes of somebody who might be, 4, 5 years behind you. I think approaching it with that humility, like you've made a couple references to that, to not acting like you knew everything.
Yeah, no, definitely didn't. Yeah, you learn a lot as you go. Kind of, it's not winging it, but kind of,
Yeah.
Especially just building out a business, you don't know what's, going to happen exactly. So definitely had to ask for a lot of advice and help. Didn't want to, let people I was talking to really know that. So I'll get back to you on that. And then I had to make some calls, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So your family, you said, was it your uncle who worked in the senior living operations?
Yeah. So my grandpa back in the day, he got into a bunch of different businesses and kind of grew up on a farm in southeast Missouri, got involved in real estate, and eventually, started investing in different things. One of them, was some nursing homes. And so I think he bought 6 nursing homes, and my uncle, learned how to run those. And then, from there, started building more assisted living memory care communities. He's built nursing homes too, some independent living, and just started building over 30 or 40 years, a lot of development. Bought some along the way too. But yeah, he owned and operates them. So, some people, there's always different structures like any real estate type. There's REITs out there that buy them and lease them out to people. There's owner operators like my uncle. There's private equity firms that partner with, GP sponsor operators. But, he never took on any capital partners or anything, just did it, slowly but surely over, a lot of time. And he's done well with it.
Yeah, that's the operations of that business it's very extensive.
Yeah, especially with staffing now, it's tough. Costs just going up. So like during COVID, costs with everything started going up.
Yeah.
I think staffing around then, started getting difficult. So it's hard to find good staff. They're a lot more expensive than they used to be. So with time, you got to kind of, it took some time for, people to be able to adjust their, the rental rates there, kind of make up for, the increased cost. But margins in the businesses slimmed down. They're picking back up. Occupancy is high now. But yeah, the industry's had to adapt. Yeah, it's really operator intensive. It's like, running a mini hospital kind of. You have a bunch of nurses, RNs, administrators, dietary, housekeeping, etc. A lot of people to manage, and in a multifamily, hey, I have 1 or 2 people there kind of on site to help out as needed. But it's really a business that they're in there running, and so it's a lot different than a lot of other real estate types for sure. It's you're not just usually, if you're an owner operator, it's not like, oh, I'm just gonna lease this out to someone and they're paying me X amount a month, triple net, whatever.
Yeah.
But money changes each month depending on how you're doing. And an operator, has a big difference in the performance of a community. Sometimes, someone's losing money there, and then a new buyer, acquires it and they put in a new operator, or they have their own operating company, and within a year they could be making money. So it's just,
Yeah.
got to know the market, got to, have efficiencies with, the operating company, got to know I don't know, there's a lot that goes into it to make it successful.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see how some people make it work and others aren't. But
That would be interesting. Are your primary seller clients, are those owner operators?
yeah, so my first deal was an owner operator. Probably early on, especially when I'm getting I'm not getting the huge deals. I think early on, my first year, the first deal was like $1.5 million. The biggest deal the next year was like 20 million. But then some smaller, $1-5 million deals, and a lot of the smaller deals are owned by owner operators.
Yeah.
Who oftentimes built them and ran them, or bought them and ran them. They have a few homes. Now it's a mixed bag. Like I sold a deal for some bigger companies with billions, if not I don't know, like a lot of real estate AUM, and others for nonprofits that are really big. So it's a mixed bag where sometimes they have third-party management in there, sometimes they have their own operating company, sometimes they're leasing them out to someone else. But yeah, still a lot of owner operators that I'm selling deals for sure.
Interesting. What was your first deal? Where was that?
It was in a town called East Dubuque, Illinois.
Yeah.
Right across from Dubuque, Iowa.
Yeah.
So way up northwest Illinois. A really small market up there. Yeah, it's starting out getting those kind of smaller. It was 55 units, so not that small, but kind of more medium sized, but just a smaller market. And that was a fun one. Got it done kind of, last day of the year of 2021, I think it was.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
And was that an owner operator selling to private equity, or what was that?
Yeah, it was an owner operator who was selling. I had a guy out of Chicago. He has some equity partners he worked with, and he was an operator, probably put in some of his own money too, and has some, capital partners that they work with that, put in the rest of the money. Yeah. So kind of, a smaller deal to kind of a Chicago group that owns and operates across Illinois.
Yeah. So when you're thinking about like your day to day, so you're obviously working on the deals that you're finding. Are you reaching out to sellers pretty actively, or do you kind of have your pipeline built up that to kind of stay in touch in case they're going to be, selling in the next 1 to 5 years, and you've kind of got a shot clock on some of them?
Yeah, right now, I'm not doing too much. I'll meet new people at conferences, and people kind of, I'm starting to get some calls from people, and the people refer, kind of references, but not as much cold calling anymore. The plan is to kind of hire people to do the same thing I did, where they research states and go call those states and really know those markets well. But now, like I have, like I said, I think 12 or 1,300 clients. So I, keeping track with my existing deals, 15 or 20 under LOI contract right now. Sold one, I think on Monday. Sold one last Wednesday. Had one February, 3 in January, late January, February. But now, I kind of just have a system where, hey, probably my first 60 clients are all people I'm actively working deals with. I kind of need to stay on my mind. So every day I'm like, okay, I'm going through those, making sure I'm on top of that. And then after there, kind of have call dates, hey, when I last reached out, when I'm going to reach out to them next. So it's just checking in, whether it's emails, calls. With people I know now, it's a lot of just emails. Unless I need something, or I'm not going to really just give them a random call anymore. It's, hey, here's what we've done the past few months. If there's anything we can help out with or keep you in mind for that's new, just let me know. And sometimes, we're always, got deals we've underwritten, and hey, now's not the right time, but maybe later on, or maybe they see I sold some deals in this state, and they have some questions on it, and they're interested in maybe selling one of their deals. So it's a lot of just catching up, keeping in touch with these clients every 2, 3, 4 months, whatever it is, and still, I don't know, so not too much cold calling, but again, from time to time I'll someone new bought in the state, I need to reach out to them. Kind of stuff like that. And introducing this new guy to a lot of my clients too, trying to get him debt business. But yeah, not doing too much cold outreach, but the next hire, I don't know if it'll be, a new agent or someone, kind of help out, with deals or something like that. But yeah, whenever we get that next person, they'll kind of do the same thing I did and doing that cold call outreach and a lot of research is the plan.
Yeah, I know. So, like, if I'm looking at this from the investor syndicator space, a lot of guys, especially like newer real estate investors, a lot of those investors, their main thing is like, how do I build relationships with these brokers? How do I get my foot in the door with brokers? If they've tried going out on their own, they're kind of like, oh, I think finding a broker's the answer for me.
Yeah.
How does a buyer stand out to you as being a buyer that's worth your time?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because I got, especially in the nursing home space, like, there's a lot of people out there looking for deals, and, they may not have any money, but then they say they have capital partners. Sometimes they say that, but they're out there getting fees every time they, like, it's kind of like an acquisition fee. So, and yeah, same thing on the syndicating side. Like, you gotta, I think in business, you gotta always know people's incentives. Hey, where are they getting paid? Why do they want to do things? And that tells you kind of, a lot of why they're motivated. And, they may say something, but can they really get it done? Different story. But yeah, get calls from people always looking for deals. I try to get some background on them. Okay, do you own and operate any already? No. Have you bought any? Where's the money coming from? How's that process look? But yeah, no, I like that question because we get honestly, at times, especially in the nursing home space, like, we have plenty of buyers. Like, if it's a fairly priced deal, I can sell it, within, a month and a half. We have, offers on the deal, and ideally get something accepted within that time frame. But yeah, people are not harassing, but, you get a lot of calls for deals. And so trying to figure out who's legit and so on is an important part of it. And I think a lot of it's from experience too. Owners don't know who's all talking, who isn't, and they're getting a lot of calls too from these people wanting to buy their deals. And so, part of the value that we're adding as brokers is, hey, we know, who's in the industry. We know, like, those people probably called us too, and so we can kind of give them some good insight on, who's easy to work with, who gets it done, who overpromises, all that sort of thing.
Yeah,
it's definitely a big part of the job. And yeah, have a lot of people out there, especially on the syndicating side, like, that's a big thing in multifamily. There's some of it in seniors, and seniors is a little bit more complex. And so, with them too, you got to make sure they have a good operating partner. There's, like, in the whole closing due diligence process too, like, there's stuff you have to do with the state, where they may not be as familiar with it if they haven't done it before. And so it's probably a lot more hand holding from a broker's perspective, telling them how to get it done. Like, I did a deal. Usually I'm the only broker involved on a deal.
Yeah.
Did a deal with another broker who, big in the industry, does a ton of deals, one of the best in the country, but they didn't really know the nursing home space well, and couldn't, it was a really difficult deal because I wasn't able to speak to the seller to advise them on, hey, here's how we get a smooth transaction done. Here's what we need to get done. So there's a lot of, niche expertise that kind of goes along with just getting these deals across the finish line that someone that's just getting the space, may not know. It's just kind of a different industry as a whole. Like, you're not out there blasting deals either, like blasting them out, in multifamily or retail. Hey, I want to get as many eyes on this as I can. I put it online. Within this space, owners don't want other people knowing it's for sale, so they don't want staff to figure out. They don't want residents to figure out because, hey, they're selling. Who's taking over? I'm going to move out. I'm going to find a new job. Maybe they think they're getting fired. So you got to really be discreet. Sometimes people post stuff online kind of more high level, like, hey, it's this many units. This is the cap rate. It's in this state. Otherwise, I take a lot of time to get to know what my clients are looking for, kind of a filter system in our database to, hey, here's looking for what, or here's who's looking for what, and kind of pull up a group, number of groups that I know would be interested, kind of, put a list together, and, depending on what the seller wants me to do. Sometimes, like, hey, you can only send it to 5 or 10 groups. You want kind of, low key under the radar. We don't want any news getting out. Other times, like, hey, go for it, but obviously still don't want news getting out. So we have everyone sign NDAs before they, look into a deal.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make sure that there's, no news at the facility that might interfere with operations. Because at the end of the day, too, you don't want, the business going downhill for some reason. Then that affects the story for the buyer. So you just want to, usually a week or two before closing, and, their earnest money is hard. They got the debt. You start making introductions with staff, and because again, you got a new company's got to go in there and hire. They usually try to hire all those people. So you can't just really go in there day one and be like, hey, new owner, you should try to do it smoother than that, but you also you don't want to do it too early where you cause a stir at the community and hurt the business.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of balancing, and sellers, and I get it, they get nervous doing that, but you want for a smooth transition so there's continued success in the community, so you kind of want to have that introduction to the new buyer and operator.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into it, and it's a balancing act for sure to try to keep everyone happy.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's something I hadn't considered as being such an important part of the deal.
I mean, same with vendors too. Like, there's so many contracts that you need to, like, especially at nursing homes. Like, the amount of vendors from like your pharmacies to rehab to food to so many other things that you need to get onboarded, and utilities, all that stuff. Like, you're taking over those. You have new vendors, partners that you put in. You're taking some of theirs too. So it's a lot to get done, and some buyers are really good at being on top of that. They know exactly what they need to do. Others a little bit more chaotic. Yeah, it's I think more goes into it than a lot of other asset types, just because of the kind of operating intensity and all those contracts and vendors and so on.
Yeah. What's it? And you kind of alluded to this with how your phone's been getting blown up, but it's been interesting because it seems like in the last 5 years, which coincides with when you launched this brokerage, it seems like senior living has been getting a lot more attention as an asset class. It's kind of becoming like the new, like, sexy asset class to get into, as funny as that sounds.
Even though it's senior, like, it sounds really boring.
Yeah.
It's exciting too.
Yeah, and one cool thing, by the way, just a side note, is how much higher quality a lot of these facilities are becoming, because the industry is kind of picking up speed like that. What's it been like being in an asset class with kind of those tailwinds, and maybe how have those conversations been with your uncle in terms of, like, what were the first 30 years like compared to how these last 5, 10 have been?
Yeah. I think, I mean, as time goes on, like, it used to be where, like, nursing homes were kind of like assisted living communities, I think, and memory care. And then, hospitals were more like nursing homes, but they keep adding different and more acuity types. So, you have active adult, which is like, 55 plus people who they're not living at home anymore. They like having activities. They're not very, they're not older. Independent living, you start to get older, but, it's still less acute than like assisted living, and then memory care, and then you have a nursing home. So they've added kind of more, steps to the continuum of care process. So that's something that's changed over the past 40 years. Each of those kind of acuity types has adapted. I think, the biggest, obstacle or difficulty over the past, since 20 years ago, I think it was a lot easier to get staff back then. Also a lot more affordable. So just finding staff's hard now, and they're expensive too, and finding good staff that's going to stay. Agency was a huge issue the past few years. Like, you have, agency in there that costs you a ton of money. They are only in there for a short period of time, so they don't know the residents or the business as well either. But yeah, I'd say like, talking to my uncle is just, kind of costs and staffing have gotten difficult. Some markets, there's an oversupply. So, like, there's something called a certificate of need. Each state has different rules in regards to, licensed beds and what you're allowed to build. Like Texas and I think Kansas and Oklahoma and some other states, they don't have a CON. Same with Georgia, I believe. It's like certain states, like, hey, build whatever. And so then people were like so excited for it. Like, oh, baby boomers, we're going to build a ton here. And then there's just an oversupply. So a lot of the communities there aren't doing well because there's so much, availability there. Whereas other states like Missouri, Tennessee, Mississippi, and a lot more, they have a CON. So, like, you have to get approved to build. You're approved for a certain number of beds. And that kind of helps, control the supply.
Yeah.
So, like, you can't just go build it anywhere and everywhere. So it's, they kind of try to manage, hey, what do we need in this market in regards to beds? And, that's valuable. But as a whole, like, getting into it 5 years ago, people kept talking about baby boomers and, silver tsunami, they call it. Kind of waiting for that to kick in. It's starting to kick in. We're not fully, I feel like in the next 5 years, it's going to 5 to 10 years to start kicking in. And, it's been tough to build too because it's so expensive. So there's so much less development.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are just doing more buying and selling than building. There's still some people building, but that's that's gonna help occupancy too because there's less supply than anticipated, but the demand is really gonna be huge. And so with time, staffing I think is still gonna be an issue just because there's so many people to take care of and less and less nurses it feels like. But that'll help build communities on the occupancy side, and then as occupancy gets full and there's more demand for it, then you can adjust rates too to kind of increase margins and so on. But there's also there's middle market, there's there's high end, there's different kind of markets for what each community is trying to provide too. Different states have different Medicaid programs too. Some people on the assisted living memory care side have what are called waiver programs, which is kind of like a daily rate that I think it's like Medicaid subsidized funding. That they cover the costs up to a certain amount and so on, and so that's valuable. States are trying to figure out how to take care of the residents that don't have $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month to pay private pay senior housing. But yeah, each state's different. Some states have great programs, other states are trying to figure it out. And Missouri, for example, on the nursing home side, had pretty low Medicaid rates when it came to nursing home reimbursement, but in the past year or so really, they've come up, they've adapted what's called a CMI system. And so it's with that, people have been able to increase their Medicaid rates. And a lot of nursing homes in Missouri were losing money because they weren't, you're losing money by taking care of a resident at like $170, $180 a day because all the staff that you have and so on, the costs that go along with it are more than that. Yeah. So trying to figure out, it's a needs-based program, especially on the nursing home side, figure out how can we help businesses, and as you help businesses, if they're making money, they can put more money back into the business and help residents. So a balancing act there too. Yeah. And each state's different, so it's helpful to kind of have that expertise I think in certain states, because they're all different. And I do like a lot, like I said, in Missouri, Illinois, Kansas, Tennessee, Mississippi, bigger deals in other states too where it's more national buyers. But again, the plan is to get people to go out there and focus in certain states like I do, really know those state laws and so on too.
Yeah. Have you been, from the sell side, have your sales all been pre-existing senior living, or have you done any where it's like a buyer is coming in to convert maybe multifamily into senior living?
I think they've all been pre-existing. I've had deals that I've sold that were seniors, and I sold them to groups that are kind of converting into the behavioral health space. Okay. I wasn't calling people that owned, non-senior living assets. Yeah. I have had deals where, an owner had converted a hotel, and then I'm selling like the hotel, but it's now a senior living community. Yeah. It's like a hotel build. I've done kind of that on the hotel side. Otherwise, everything's been, I'm trying to think. Maybe some buildings haven't been purpose built. I think, some have been multifamily that maybe my clients bought and converted. Like Jeremy, who works with me, he's refinancing a deal that was a hotel. Yeah. Guy was converted to senior living. I think I had that first deal I think I sold may have been multifamily first, converted to senior living. So my clients have done it, and then I've sold it as seniors, or I've had deals like I said where it's a senior living community, it's not doing great as a seniors, and so a lot of those deals are trading to behavioral health groups. Like one deal I sold, I think the guy turned it into like a transition house maybe for people out of prison. Going into the trying to get back into normal life. Others I've seen schools. I've seen there's a lot of drug and alcohol. Looking at those deals. I have a deal under contract that's getting more like a kind of transitional for homeless. Maybe not homeless, but stuff like that. But it's hard to find different uses at times for these buildings because like assisted living memory care, there's no kitchens, in the room and stuff like that. They're not in there cooking. Independent living, you'll have a kitchenette or a kitchen. But it's tough. You can't go sell assisted living really as a multifamily because it's, there's some of that, but most of it's just selling existing seniors to people that are going to buy it and use it for seniors or long-term care. Yeah, that makes sense because it is such a interesting layout. Yeah, it would be easier to maybe subdivide multifamily to make it senior living as opposed to the other way around. Yeah, I know we were looking at something. New city that kind of fit the mold. It wasn't senior living in the past, but
think it was like a veterans facility back in the day, and it's been vacant for a long time. But the wheels kind of started turning like, oh, this, because my client was looking at it as multifamily, and I was like, I think senior living is probably going to be the highest and best use,
Were there many units in that?
I want to say 40 or so.
Gotcha.
So a decent amount.
Okay.
But he ended up not moving forward with it. It was like, it's such an operations heavy business.
Yeah.
So
Especially if you don't know it, getting into it.
Yeah.
And like within seniors and skilled nursing, especially in skilled nursing, like, you can lose a lot of money. Like you can make a good amount, but you can also lose a lot just because staffing and costs are so expensive. So it's something where I feel like, in retail you can lose money, but probably not as much as you can lose in this space. But cap rates are higher in this space than, multifamily. I think partially because of that, also partially because, I think a big part of it is, hey, it's so operating heavy and intensive, but also because of the risk that comes along with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a fascinating asset class. Like I've kind of there's another guy up here, his name's Danny.
Stricker?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Danny actually just texted me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Working in the operations side.
Yeah, chapters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it's definitely a fascinating business to me.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of like rewinding, obviously you started this brokerage on your own. You were working at the company, and again, I still think it's super impressive that you took that leap to just go for it and do it on your own. And the amount of growth that you've had is actually exceptional. You kind of like grazed over those numbers, but you're doing pretty high volume for being in the business 4 years.
Yeah. On the nursing home side, and also all these other companies, they still got a bunch of agents, but nursing homes last year, I think we ranked number 8 in the country.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But the people ahead of me are doing a lot.
Yeah, I hear you.
They got more people. We're trying to get there slowly but surely.
Yeah. When you were growing up, what were you like the entrepreneurial kind of business starting kind of guy? I know you were the Energizer Bunny on the soccer team, but what kind of stuff were you doing when you were a kid in high school, college?
Definitely.
Too?
Well, sports, I was good at school and, worked hard there and, tried to, whatever I'm doing, I'm pretty competitive. So try to be the best in school, try to be the best in sports. But also I was thinking about this earlier. I was always pretty entrepreneurial. We do lemonade stands, of course, but everyone did those. But then in middle school, one of our friends, she was selling those power balance bands, if you remember those.
Yeah, I do.
So she was selling those at school, and I got on board with her where I started buying those from China for I think $3 to $6 maybe, depending how much you bought them in bulk. And you could buy them here for $30, so I'd sell them to my friends for 15.
Yeah.
Started doing that a bit. And then I was starting, stuff in high school. I was pretty, stuff to look good for college, always, but started kind of nonprofit stuff, in addition to school and sports that I was doing to build out the resume, but do some good too, and I enjoyed it. College, I started, I was working for some startups then, on top of school, and then my senior year I was working full-time at the Brokerage, taking night classes, so always, pretty business-oriented, and kind of in my family, it's, always been my mom, she'll say her side of the family likes to talk food, and my dad's side likes to talk business.
Yeah.
And I love it. I like talking business and growing up with different family companies, kind of see what my family's done, and it's just always been something that I've seen them do. And my grandpa really started from nothing and did well and built multiple businesses, and so it's been something I've really been interested in. And so kind of had that goal to someday do my own thing for sure, and never going back now. It's great working for yourself. There's more responsibility, but I don't have to really. I listen to my clients, so I kind of have a bunch of bosses.
Yeah.
But just building out this, and it's good working with family too. I get to talk to my cousins and brother and dad and so on, and see them, and I'm always in touch with them about things. But it kind of didn't know if I was going to kind of work with the family and help run some things, but then really just felt driven to do my own thing, and so here we are, and it's going well, and I enjoy it. And trying to build that out and, find ways to work with family too, hopefully.
Yeah. I love that power balance.
Yeah, I know. It was great. I was giving them a deal too and getting some cash, and I just ordered them from China.
Yeah.
I love that story.
I remember that. And then I remember when I was at like SLU, there were some kids who were like got deals on Elite socks.
Yeah,
Remember
those
the
were a thing
Elites?
too.
That was
Yep.
a big sale. We used to, my neighbor and I, we had a snow cone stand that we would do, but then we also would, these glue bookmarks in third grade were somehow like a thing that
Glue
kids would
bookmarks?
make. Yeah,
Okay.
just made out of glue. You'd pour it in your
Oh,
desk.
yeah,
and
yeah.
And we started making them in bulk at her house and
hilarious.
selling them for like $1 a piece.
Nice.
I think stuff like that is so funny to look back on.
Yeah.
When
Same with like those other rubber band things like.
silly bands.
Yeah, those were big too. But then there was the ones like Armstrong bands. Remember how everyone had those?
Yeah.
I didn't. We would kind of trade those. I think between friends and stuff. I can maybe sell them at times, but
Yeah.
similar.
Oh, that's great. So did you ever spend any time working in the senior living business when you, I mean, I guess you're not necessarily like a skilled nurse, so maybe not, but did you spend any time on that business growing up?
Never working in the operations. Just kind of grew up knowing family was in the business, and but yeah, never got. And then on the ops, it'd be valuable for sure. Like I've spent time in homes, touring and just being with family and independent living and nursing homes and so on, spending time in there. And nowadays I take extra attention. Like, okay, this is interesting being in them and seeing how it all runs, but really just learn through talking to people there. Haven't gone and spent, a month or 2 months working as, XYZ, whatever, at a community, but more so just been around it and familiar with the terminology and so on.
Yeah. So looking back at like day one, now that you're where you're at today, would you have done anything different, or have you gained any new perspective or lessons you've learned that you wish you would have kind of figured out a little sooner?
I feel like I'll look back in 5 years and maybe I'll think like early on it's really just digging up business. I mean, sometimes you spend too much time on something like, I still sometimes, you'll get kind of screwed because you don't get an exclusive. Like you trust them, like, hey, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And they kind of go behind your back. And that still happens mostly with people kind of getting out of the industry and they know they're out. So they don't worry about what I think about them and so on anymore. But, you get kind of people go behind your back early on and maybe, trying to get more exclusives and, not, winging, like not winging, but like working things while they're doing their own thing on the other side. But early on too, you're not getting a bunch of exclusives, so I'm just chasing anything I could get.
Yeah.
And the guy that's working with me now, he's similar situation where, hey, trying to get deals done, and it's hard to get that exclusive. Sometimes it works out, and you can do a lot of business with someone and they have your back. Other times, you do it and they go a different direction, and they'll reach out to the person you connected them with behind your back, or they'll you do spend all this time on it and they go go with someone else because you don't have that exclusive. That's something that we always think about. But other than that, it just takes time of, building up that business. And then, as you get more deals done, it's easier to get deals.
Yeah.
So I can't think of really anything different. I think I've just done what you need to do to build up business. But I feel like in 5 or 10 years, maybe as, we grow the company, like, oh, maybe I should have, I've heard people like, hey, I should have hired someone sooner. Like, and I've thought about that, but hiring people takes time away from what I'm doing too. I gotta, help them, onboard them, and so on. So, kind of focus on, I'm just getting the deals done, and whenever it feels right, or maybe if I gotta just find the right person. I have people in mind, but just trying to figure out the next step on growing. But yeah, I feel like in 5 or 10 years, maybe I'll look back then and be like, okay, I should have hired sooner, or I should have hired this person first, and so on. But I don't know the answer right now.
Yeah.
I should catch up with some people in the space, and I probably will sometime soon. And pick their brain. Kind of the last time I met with those people to pick their brain was when I was looking to hire this guy over the summer, and figuring out how to structure that and so on. So should catch up with them and figure out what a good next step would be and the next hire and see what they think, because I don't know the right answer. Got some ideas, but
yeah, that's interesting, and I think there is a lot to be said about focus. I think like you kind of alluded to, it takes time away from what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of like a lesson I'm sure you've just kind of learned, is like focusing on what the best use of your time is.
Yep.
Not that you would trade it in, because you have to go through all that stuff to learn because you need that foundation of knowledge.
I got to know how to do that boring research so I can tell other people how to do it.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to spend it's not worth my time to do that now. But I mean, yeah, it's the same thing. Like I had to learn, the underwriting and the BOVs and so on. And the guy who works with me now, he'll help out on that front. I kind of give him a split on the deals on the ones that he helps out with. But I mean, you look at it and kind of, say you're, see what you're making, and you could look at, hey, what is that worth on an hourly basis? And hey, I could pay someone to go do that rather than me doing it. And I could just focus on catch up with clients, building those relationships, getting new deals, and so on. Still figuring it all out really as we grow.
Yeah, I love that. Because it's a really honest answer, and I think that's why I love doing these interviews, especially with a few of these guys who have been about at the same point as you, like 4 or 5 years in, and I think it's like if we had done this interview 10 years from now, and you would say, here's what I would have done.
Yeah.
But sometimes, like when it's you or me listening to somebody who's, say, 15 years ahead, they're saying they would have done something sooner, so we're thinking we should do it now.
Yeah.
But realistically, your memory you start consolidating time.
Yeah.
So they might think stuff was happening in year 4, but it was really happening in year 8.
100%.
And they kind of have forgotten those 4 years crunched in right there. Like me and Parker Mitchum, one of the guests who know, we were talking about how it's just so cool to have this documented so we can do it again in a few years.
Then maybe I'll be able to answer that question.
And you'll have, better
I should have hired 4 agents. Because, like you said, like senior living is a niche, and it's kind of got a lot of excitement in the past several years. And there's not as many brokers as there are in multifamily or retail. There's less properties, but still, like, there's other shops starting out, that are trying to build out debt brokerages or just senior living brokerages, and they're out there trying to find new agents, and I could go hire 2 or 3 people right now, but in a matter of my time and finding the best way to go about it, I think it'll really come down to the people that we have, getting the best people to be competitive, and but yeah, I don't know, other people are growing, and that kind of gets me thinking, hey, shoot, maybe I need to be hiring more than them so that I have more people working than them and calling in these different states, or maybe I do still kind of take it slow and steady and, find the right person. So don't know what the right answer is. Maybe again, I look back in 5 years and said I should have hired 5 agents this year and just really grown really quick.
Yeah.
But I see people grow quick, in the senior living and nursing home space. There's just so much to take on. They lose focus of, the communities that they have, and they aren't performing as well. And sometimes you grow too quick and then you go out of business. And I'd rather kind of sleep easy at night.
Yeah.
Not that I sleep easy. I'm sleeping pretty well now, but like back in the day, and still on deals, like sometimes deals keep me up at night. But I don't know. I'm not gonna. I don't think I'm going that route where I'm just gonna hey, I want 2, 3, 4 agents, gonna grow really quick. And also, like, structure wise, I want in this space, I want people to be with me long term. So a lot of brokerages out there, hey, join up. We're not gonna pay you anything, or we'll pay you a small draw, whatever, and we get half the fee. Like, I got a smaller shop, got to be more competitive than that. But yeah. Still, like I said, figuring it out, and we'll see what the next hire is, and hopefully I'm making the right decisions. But time will tell. Either way, I don't think it's it's not going to destroy. But I think going slowly and surely is maybe I don't grow as quick as these other groups, but long term I think it'll be helpful just to keep it all under control.
I agree. I respect that a lot, and I agree, because I think sometimes too with those you see these numbers, and a lot of times it's revenue versus profit, and then there's also like glamour numbers. A lot of people like to pump their own tires.
For sure, like people in the space, like, oh, I operate 40 nursing homes, but someone could make more money operating 10 really well than they do 40, because 20 of those could be losing money. And same in brokerage, like, oh, I got 20 agents under me, but how many of them are successful, and so on. So just trying to make sure, like with the new guy that joined up, want to make sure, and he will be successful. Like he's great, but get things in order. Make sure he's kind of, in the swing of things. And then maybe after that, get that next person, hey, it worked well for him. It could work well for you. You follow kind of this model that we have and stay consistent. It takes time. Just playing it by ear kind of.
So, it kind of is like you're focused on like in making yourself better too, that's kind of the power of what you're doing right now is you're taking it slow, but you do have a sense of urgency and skill development and all these things that you're working on. What's like your primary mode for educating yourself today and kind of sharpening your tool belt?
You learn a lot talking to people. Clients say, here, what's going on in the business? What's the obstacles and so on. Going to the conferences. They have like talks at these conferences. I spend most of my time meeting with people. I got to kind of be, get myself out there, meet with clients, on deals and stuff. But early on, I go to those talks, and they're still interesting when I have free time to go to those, just kind of see where the market is. And, you got experts up there talking. There's other like new subscriptions that are specialized to the senior living and long-term care space too.
Yeah.
So, I subscribe to those where, we get, kind of weekly updates 2 or 3 times a week with maybe even every day, like with, hey, what's going on in the market, what's sold, what's like big moves in the industry. And they have like quarterly reports, annual reports. So I'm always reading those and, trying to stay in the loop on what's going on in the space. LinkedIn too, read up on there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, conferences, subscriptions, talking to clients and LinkedIn, kind of it's all those, trying to absorb as much as I can. And I'm just seeing a lot out there doing deals. I look at a lot of deals, how they're performing, what's working, what's not. So get to see it kind of firsthand too.
Yeah. Yeah. I that makes a lot of sense because you're really focusing on your specific craft. I think there have been times with myself in terms of information intake where like I get really into podcasts or really into books and it is good overall for like my, brain and just, forming different synopses.
Sure. Yeah.
But also I think sometimes I'll get like, I'll spend a lot of time like reading something that's not directly applicable today. Yeah. Where like in some cases it is, but it's like, okay, this was a very abstract book that I just read that maybe not,
for today.
Steering the shit like me.
You never know where it'll be down the road. But
yeah, that's true. Yeah. Do you like reading or podcasts or anything like that?
There are some podcasts in the space. I'll listen to podcasts like when I'm driving around a lot. Like I was down in Florida for a couple months, drove down there, so I'm killing time.
Yeah.
But like on a daily basis, no, not really.
Yeah.
But if I'm trying to kill some time on a long drive, listen to a book or podcast. Book wise, I've read like a couple real estate books, but not in a while.
Yeah.
Just kind of, I don't know. Not that I know everything, but like just I'd rather get experience through the real world than reading it probably and having a lot of conversations, seeing what people are doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still like to do those, but mostly just on those long car rides.
I hear you. Yeah, I feel like you can get much more concentrated to the point.
Yeah.
Current information the way you're doing it, which is very cool. Yeah, so I guess, are there any, we kind of covered this in talking about lessons you've learned, but if you had a vision for the next 5 years, if you could kind of paint the picture of what it might look like, have you given that any consideration?
Yeah, definitely a lot. I just want to be where, got people like me where, I'm doing a lot in certain markets. In 5 years, it'd be great. I don't know if, I feel like once I start hiring too and have someone else that can help out with new hires and stuff and like get an office, it can kind of be more exponential growth then. Maybe 5 years down the road, we have, at least 30, 40, or maybe all 50 states covered where we have someone that's, focused in those states. Has either researched them all and called every owner operator there or is in the process of doing that. And so kind of, national platform where we can sell the smaller deals in any state.
Yeah.
Because like the big deals are easier. They're harder to get. You got to get a track record first. But like, I've sold deals in, Indiana, Georgia. Like if it's 10, 15, 20 million plus, more of a national buyer. So it's easier and you don't need to know the local mom and pop, guy or woman that's going to buy a 20 or 30, 40 unit home. Because the big groups aren't looking for those smaller deals. So you got to know those smaller local players. That's kind of the goal in 5 years to have a more national platform where we can do smaller deals across the country and bigger deals too. And as time goes on, you get more of the bigger deals. So trying to just keep getting deals done, show people we're doing them well, and get more business, and then kind of expand our footprint is the plan. And same on the debt side, have more agents there that build more relationships with banks and so on to be able to cover the entire country.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's a good plan. And I
we'll
guess
figure it out.
Yeah, over the next 10, it's just continuing to build that out.
Yeah, really. not reinventing the wheel. Hopefully though, I don't know, with the brokerage and AI and getting that incorporated, it should be helpful. Like I have some meetings about OMs and stuff. Like, hey, you can kind of AI is going to help build these OMs where much quicker, saving time there. Same probably with underwriting, with like, and even like we have this new CRM where it's you can kind of put filters on hey, who's looking for what, and then you put in a deal and it kind of filters out, hey, here's who's going to be most interested in those deals, stuff like that. Again, that incorporates, so it's still relationship business, but trying to get tech involved, just to save us time, be competitive. Not reinventing the wheel. It's brokerage. People have been doing it forever, but it's always changing with time.
Yeah.
And then maybe with as that builds out, there's kind of different companies that could be started that are have good relationships, or kind of synergetic. Or is that the word? I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Relationships. Like. Now I've looked into like kind of bridge lending, debt fund type stuff. Kind of want to be a one-stop shop for the senior living, long-term care space. Where hey, we can sell your deals, we can get debt for them, like the the brokerage side. My family's in banking too, and we're getting more active in the kind of the lending space within senior living and long-term care. But bridge lending is an interesting space too. So maybe people also HUD, people buy HUD shops where hey, we can source your debt, we can give you debt, we can get you a HUD loan too. So maybe that's a growth option down the road, but first kind of building out the brokerage, and then as that gets more organized and bigger and kind of hopefully running itself, start looking at other options too.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's awesome how much of a vision you have. And you're dialed. You fit the mold of the show. Yeah,
nothing crazy new, but just seeing what other people are doing and trying to do it well, or if not better, and it's really just about getting the business and doing it well. It's hard to get the business, but with time kind of comes.
Yeah. Is there anything we haven't covered that you wish we had?
Not really on the senior side. Interested to kind of see where you're going with, DIALED and the family. It'd be interesting to kind of, see what your vision is.
Yeah. So with DIALED, it is interesting. I've always been into like podcasts.
Doing great. Like I was thinking, I was like, dude, if he would ever like do third-party marketing for companies, like you'd kill it too. Like just doing that. I'm sure you're busy as is, but like, I don't have like a marketing team or anything. I get yours. It's all been really impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is kind of in the background.
Awesome.
So for me, it's like I really want to focus on our real estate business, and that is the challenge, because I understand that focus is the name of the game. You have to stay focused, and that's why with like DIALED, I'm doing episodes every 2 weeks, and kind of trying to build up organically.
Yep.
But I do kind of have a broader vision for it, in terms of getting into development, real estate development and personal development. Like the context of a lot of these conversations is finding out the skills and the principles of highly driven and highly successful people, and kind of trying to relay those tools and principles to people who are just a few steps behind.
Yeah.
And for me, it's been a learning experience for me, because you see like some of my guests, like Keith Barquette on here. He's 80. He's in his 80s, and then you've got like Bo Reinberg, who's in his 40s. I think he's in his 40s, and doing like best box storage, and you kind of pick up on different crumbs of what these guys have done. And so there's more to the vision that I don't want to expose quite yet, but awesome. Definitely it will evolve, and then just staying focused on like home sales is something I'm really passionate about. I really love the deal side, and I also just love the people side of the business.
Yep.
But potentially there's opportunity down the road to expand into some more commercial. Multifamily would probably make the most sense, because we work in single family, so it's going to be the most complementary business. But for now it's like I just have to stay focused on getting better and better at exactly what I'm doing, and once we're at capacity there, then I can start thinking about those other options.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, my dad and brother are involved in some more commercial development here in St. Louis too, and I like to, development's interesting, and I know a lot of people. I'm good at connecting them with people too. So, try to get involved, if and when we get more active on that side of things too. So can always keep in touch there too if there's something to work on together.
Yeah. It will. It'll be interesting. We'll have a fun 5 years ahead.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's kind of been a lot of work to get here, and kind of in the heat of things, and hopefully either stays where it is, and or ideally even gets better. It's a exciting time for senior living and brokerage, and it's I've enjoyed it. It's been like a roller coaster. Brokerage always is too. We'll see in 5 years what I'd say to those questions and where we're at.
Yeah, we'll run it back.
Sounds good.
All right.
Awesome.
Good talk.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah.